How's it going, everybody? This is Mike. Welcome back to my channel. And tonight I'm going to start showing you my collection of television shows that I have on DVD. And I got this idea from my friend Joe, whose channel's name is, what is it? Mayo's Movies. Mayo's Movies. Joe recently showed his TV collection, and he had a lot of really cool stuff. So I thought I would take this idea from him. I never come up with any ideas of my own. I usually do what somebody else is doing. So this is going to be in several parts because I don't want these to go on too long. So, sort of in alphabetical order, but not really. Let's start out. Starting with letter A, and we have an empty package, or a package with nothing on it. What could be in here? This calls for a little explanation. There used to be a guy that had a business. Well, I don't know if this guy is still around. His name was Stephen Russo, and he called himself Video Steve. And I found his ad in one of the magazines. It must have been Film Facts magazine quite a number of years ago. And he had this long list of television shows and TV specials and old movies, all sorts of things that were for sale. And I don't know where he got all these things, but yeah, documentaries, news programs, all kind of commercials, all kinds of cool stuff. And I sent away for his list. His list was something like that thick, and started buying some of his things on VHS back probably in the 1990s, I guess, late 80s, I'm not sure. And then was kind of out of touch with him for a while, and then I found out that he was converting things over to DVD. So I started buying some of the things on DVD. And the last time I spoke to this guy, which has been several years, tried to order some things from him, he said that he was in poor health, he was having some problems, and he may not be able to continue his business, but he would let people know. Well, I didn't hear from him again, so I don't know what happened to Mr. Rousseau, but he was a very cool businessman to deal with, and put out some nice, interesting stuff. So what I have here, there are two DVD-Rs in here. It's probably going to fall out here. Yep, they are. Two DVD-Rs. Each one has 2 episodes of an old TV series, okay? So both of which are not yet commercially available in stores and all that sort of thing, and have not been remastered in any way. But the first 2 are from an old TV show called Adventures in Paradise, which ran from 1959 to 1962. It starred Gardner McKay. Yeah, there we go. Gardner McKay as a guy who was sailing around the South Seas and having all kinds of cool adventures. And it was actually called James A. Michener's Adventures in Paradise. So a lot of you might, if you're my age, you might remember it. And one of the episodes is called Daughter of Illusion from the year 1960, and it stars none other than Barbara Steele, my favorite actress, back during her bleach blonde hair days when she was under contract to 20th Century Fox in America. So it's very cool to have this on any form. And the other episode stars a veteran actress named Paulette Goddard, who was, of course, once married to Charlie Chaplin and was in some of his films. So that's very cool to have, too. The other disc has 2 episodes of a TV show called East Side, West Side from the year 1963-64. It was on for 1 season on CBS. It stars George C. Scott as a crusading social worker in New York City, and it co-stars Elizabeth Wilson, who also plays a social worker, and a young actress named Cicely Tyson, who plays their secretary. A very pioneering, hard-hitting show. It has a lot of location shots of New York City during that time, and it's just a show that I remember watching every single week. And in fact, about an hour ago, I found a place online that is selling almost every episode of this show, so I sent away for it. So this collecting thing never stops. All right, next up I have 3 seasons of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. I have season 1, season 3, and season 4. Don't ask me where the others are. I couldn't tell you, but these are great. I would like to have all the seasons of that program. Here is a bootleg that I found at a flea market one year. 2 episodes of American Bandstand from the year 1967, complete with the original commercials. How cool is that? Some of the guests, we have Neil Diamond, we have the Electric Prunes, we have the Youngbloods, kids dancing, black and white. It's wonderful. You just can't get any better than that. Next, I have 4 seasons of the Andy Griffith Show, seasons 1 through 4. Okay. Now, I loved this show when I was a kid, and these are so cool to have. I would like to actually have the entire series. But right now, I'm very happy to have what I have. Okay. Next up, this is something I bought from oldies.com, Alpha Video. This is a very old show. It's called Atomic Attack. It's from 1953. And it's Phyllis Thaxter, Walter Matthau, and a very young Patty McCormick, pre The Bad Seed. And this is about the aftermath of an atomic attack on, I think, New York City. And it doesn't really show anything science fiction-like. It just has the reactions of a family and people, normal people, who are trying to come to grips with how the world has, sort of gone up in flames. That's pretty interesting. One of these things that's on like a kinescope, so the picture is not all that great, but it's certainly nice for historical value. Next up, this is a documentary, another blank case. I found this online. This is Clive Barker's A to Z of Horror. Now we have Volume 1 and Volume 2. This is a documentary series from 1997. It was on BBC Two, and I think it played in the United States as well. But it has just these very involved stories, documentaries about different aspects of horror movies, real-life horror. For example, for the letter A, they have it's called American Psycho, and they talk about the movie Psycho, but they also talk about what Psycho was based on, the real-life story of the serial killer Ed Gein, and they show some of his property and pictures and people who knew the guy, interviews. But the main reason that I wanted this, Barbara Steele again, for the letter M, they have a terrific segment called Mistress of the Night, and they talk all about Barbara Steele and her imagery in horror films. She's featured in it. She talks about her career, and we also have commentary from people like Joe Dante, Roger Corman, and Tim Burton. So it's really cool to have. Very happy to have it. Next up, I have all 5 seasons of Babylon 5. I just brought down one to show you, but I actually have not watched any of these as yet, but I will someday get around to it. Next up, I have 2 seasons of the TV show Barney Miller, Season 1, and season, let's see, what is this? Season 3. And I picked these up because they were available at a very low price. I actually love this show, and I would very much like to get this entire series. Great cast of actors, cool stories, very funny. Next up, we have, this is the movie that started Battlestar Galactica, the Lorne Greene, Richard Hatch version, which I do not remember seeing when it was on. I would like to see it now. I picked this up again because it was very inexpensive and it was terrific. So I very much would like to see the series if it's ever available. Next up, I have 4 episodes of The Betty Hutton Show from 1960, another one-season wonder. Of course, Betty Hutton was a classic star from the golden age of Hollywood. She tried to get this TV show started. Didn't work out very well, but it really, it's kind of fun to watch. This is another thing I watched when I was a kid. So next we have another bootleg that I got from a flea market. This is 4 episodes of The Betty White Show from the 1950s, which I don't remember seeing that when I was a kid. She was on TV so much. I think she had a couple of shows that were called The Betty White Show. One was a talk show, but this is actually a sitcom, so it's kind of fun. Next up we have, this is a TV special. It's called The Big TNT Show, and it's preceded actually by this show called The TAMI Show. This came out in '65. This was, I think, later on that same year. I put these together because they really belong together. The TAMI Show, which stands for Teenage Awards Music International, whatever that means. But it's a concert show of rock and roll, classic rock and roll. We have people like the Beach Boys, who were the hosts of the show, Chuck Berry, James Brown, the Barbarians, Marvin Gaye, Jerry and the Pacemakers, Leslie Gore, Jan and Dean, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, the Supremes, and the Rolling Stones. And then this one has Roger Miller, Joan Baez, the Byrds, the Lovin' Spoonful, Ike and Tina Turner, the Modern Folk Quartet, Ray Charles, Donovan, Petula Clark, the Ronettes, Bo Diddley, and the host is David McCallum. So these are fantastic. I mean, live music and very exciting, and lots of screaming teenage girls, which gets a little bit old, quite frankly. Then we have how can you not have the entire five seasons of the Brady Bunch? I mean, really, what are you waiting for? This is essential. I actually like the show very much, especially maybe the last two seasons when the kids get a little bit older and they have all of their teenage angst. That's kind of funny. Next up is a very cool show called Brenner, which is a police detective show. It started out in 1959 as there we go. Started out in 1959 as a summer replacement on one of the networks. I can't remember which one, and then came back a couple of years after that as summer replacements. And then finally they showed some of the last episodes in 1963. It stars Edward Binns and James Broderick, who happens to be Matthew Broderick's father. They played a father and son police team. They worked in the same police precinct, and so it showed all the things about their relationship and their disagreements, and also the mean streets of New York City. So a very good show that I always liked very much. The next up is I have all 4 seasons. I think I'll stop after this. This is going on a little bit long. Next for all 4 seasons of a Western called Bronco, starring Ty Hardin as a guy named Bronco Lane. Now, this happened to be a replacement for another classic Western, which will be coming up later, called Cheyenne, starring Clint Walker. Clint Walker started out this show back in 1955, and by 1958 he was tired of all the dealing with Warner Brothers and not getting enough pay and all this sort of thing. So he basically walked out of his contract, and they quickly put this together as a replacement for Cheyenne. Cheyenne Bodie was the guy who was in the Cheyenne show, and they invented somebody named Bronco Lane, starring Ty Hardin. And eventually Clint Walker came back to Cheyenne, and this was spun off as its own series. It was basically, they had something called the Cheyenne Show, and they would alternate Cheyenne, Bronco, and another show which I will talk about later called Sugarfoot. So I think that's probably a good place to stop. I'll stop with Captain Video. Captain Video and his Video Rangers, which was on from 1949 to something like 1956 on the old Dumont network, which was one of the 3 networks, ABC, 4 networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Dumont. But of course, it went off the air, I think, in the late 50s. And this was a kid show, very primitive, and most of the episodes don't exist anymore. I guess they destroyed most of them for some stupid reason. But it's just a very early science fiction-ish thing. Captain Video and his Video Rangers, which is only 4 episodes on here. I would like to be able to find more, see if I can, but these are just a lot of fun. And I will be back with part 2 and part 3, part 4, part 5. Let me know what you think about all this old stuff. Good night.